Assalamualaikum and hi. In this video, we're going to go through the solutions for one of the exercise that we have, which is the loan rate calculations. So for this exercise, it says write a Java programs to perform tasks related to loan rate calculations. Your program should first ask the user to input the total number of loans they want to process. Then for each loan, prompt the user to enter the principal amount and the duration. We need to determine the interest rate based on the following criteria. For example, if it's 5 years or less, then the annual interest rate should be 5%. So note this is percentage here. Also, for each loan, calculate the total amount to be repaid. These include the principal plus the interest for the entire durations of the loan. You will also need to determine the loan with the highest total repayment amount and calculate the average interest rate applied across all loans. So here it says the program should display the following. You have an example output here, where first you prompt the users for the principal and durations, and then you display the details along with the interest rate and also the total repayment here. Well, in fact, you can have these information so right after the first loan. It seems complicated if you read the questions, but if we break these down into a few subtasks, then it is easier to tackle the whole programming task here. Let's start with the first part where it says your program should first ask the user to input the total number of loans they want to process. So we know that we need to use the scanner class here, import the scanner package, we create a scanner object, and then we display an instructions. We read the input from the user using the next integer, because in this case, we know that this total number of loans, so definitely it's integer without numbers with decimal points. And finally, for the first sections here, I do a looping here, because within the looping, then I will need to add in more questions for the user, for example, to ask them to enter the, what we call that, the principal amount and also the loan durations, as you can see here. Okay, but for the first part, there's sufficient here. I'm going to run this one, and well, there's a semicolon missing here. So I'm going to fix that. Run it again, enter the total number of loans. So for example, if it's 2, then you will see enter the information for loan 1, enter the information for loan 2. So this is enough for the first sections. Make sure you get this correct, then only you move on to part 2. So for part 2 here, it says for each loan, okay, prompt the user to enter the principal amount and the durations of the loans in years. Okay, so first sections, we have asked the user how many loans. So for example, if they say 2 loans, then for each of the loans, then I will need to ask the user about the principal amount of that loan and also the loan duration. So it's the similar concept here, but we are just going to ask a different questions. And of course, if it involves different data types, then we need to use different methods. So for example, in this case, we ask for the principal amount. Here I do import and I create another object here, but later on when you combine everything, you can kind of like just eliminate this. Okay, so we ask the user for the principal amount because we know that the principal amount can be in numbers with decimal point. It can be, for example, I want to loan 10,050 cents, right? So we use double in this case. As for the loan durations, to simplify the task, we just put this as integer, right? So for example, it can 1 year, 5 years, 9 years, and so on. Well, in the real world, you can actually have, for example, 1.5 years, which is 18 months. Okay, that's possible. But for this exercise, for simplicity, we just do integer. Okay, so you have 1 here to read for the principal amount, and then you read the loan durations. And for the second part, we just want to test on this. So I just do a print. So I print the principal and so print the year here. Now, if I run this, enter the principal amount, let's say 10,000. And the loan durations, let's say 4 years, so I get 10,000 and 4 years. So the second part works. I'm not going to combine it yet. I'm going to move on to the third part, right? It really depends how you want to do it. So you can, for example, finish part 1, you move on to part 2, you combine part 1 and part 2, or you want to do each of the parts up until the end, then only you combine everything. So it's totally up to you. Now, part 3 here, for each loan, determine the interest rate based on the criteria given. Remember, in the questions, we have a table which lists down the loan durations and also the annual interest rate. So for example, if my loan duration is more than 10 years, then my interest rate will be 7% annually, okay? So what I do here is I'm going to use if-else statements, okay? It really depends on you. Again, if you want to do a switch statements, that's totally fine. But I think in this scenario, if-else statements will be much more appropriate. So here, these values should come from the user. But because I'm just doing a single part, so I first initialize the value. Later on, you will see how I will get this value from the user, which is from part 1 and part 2. Then only I will determine the interest rate. So now assume that my principal here with the data type double is 10,000, the year is 4. I want to determine the interest rate. So of course, I first initialize my interest rate. So interest rate can be or should be in double or float number of decimal points. You can have interest rate 5.5, 3.4, and so on. And I do a if-else statements here. I have 3 conditions to consider. So if it's less than 5, then the interest rate is 0.05. Okay, so I straight away do interest rate equal to 0.05 rather than 5, because I know that later on I will need to do calculations. If you want to do, let's say, interest rate equal to 5, and then later on, then only you switch it to 0.05 during the calculations, that's fine as well. But I think in this case, this is easier. So interest rate is 0.05. If between 5 and 10 is 0.06 with 6%. And finally, 7% for more than 10 years. So here I assume that the user will enter correct years, right? It's not, for example, -1 or whatsoever, which is an invalid input, okay? But of course, we can expand it. So for example, we can add another else if, and then finally a else, which say is an invalid input, okay? Again, for simplicity, we just do this one with only 3 conditions. I'm going to run this one. This does not involve any user input. So if my principal is 10,000, which does not really matter in this case because the interest rate is based on the loan duration. So if my loan duration, which is the years here, is 4, then my interest rate should be 0.05, which is 5%. Okay. So here I've done up until part 3. Let's move on to part 4. Okay, part 4 is you need to calculate the total amount to be repaid. This includes the principal, okay, which is the principal amount that the user entered, plus the interest for the entire durations of the loan. So note here this entire durations of the loan. So we need to have our interest calculate correctly. Okay, so now assume that, okay, I have a principal of 10,000, the loan duration is 4, and the interest rate is 0.05, because we need to remember this interest rate is actually an annual interest rate, right? Annual interest rate. So when I calculate the total repayment, the total amount, which is, it says the principal plus the interest. So of course, here I have the principal. So how I'm going to calculate the interest will be, well, if I break this formula down, is the annual interest will be equal to my principal multiply my interest rate, right? Okay, that will be my annual interest. But it says here, for the entire durations of the loan, so I will need to multiply, if you can see here, I multiply with the years, which is the total durations. So for example, here, if my principal is 10,000, I will need to plus the annual interest rate multiply the total duration. So this part here is the annual interest rate. For each year, this will be the amount that you need to pay, and I will need to multiply the total duration, which is your total loan durations in this case will be 4. Okay, so I written this down as a formula here, and I print the total repayment. I'm going to run this, so you know that here will be 12,000. Okay, so my principal is 10,000. Principal multiply interest rate, in this case 5%, will be 500 every year. Multiply with the total years, that will be 4, so you get 12,000. Okay, well, part 5 is just simply to print out everything using string concatenation. So this might get a little bit complicated. You need to do it carefully, because you have, for example, I think you have 5 variables all together within a statement. Okay, now I'm going to combine these all together. Of course, for the first part, I'm going to copy this first. Okay, I haven't done the maximum and average yet, so let's combine everything first, then only we do the maximum and also the average. Okay, as we say, this is the first part, and then for part 2, we need to ask for principal amount and so loan durations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this one, okay, and I'm going to put it here. Okay, enter the informations for loan 1, and after that, right after that, I will have my part 2, which asks for the principals and also the years. Okay, I do a print here. Then right after I get the principal and also year, then I can determine the interest rate. So here I will have the if-else statement for my interest rate somewhere around here. The best will be at the beginning here, right? You declare your double interest rate. And now will be part 4. Part 4 will be the calculations. I do not need to have all this because these are determined based on the previous part. What I really need will be just the formula here. I'll copy the formula and I put that within here, right? Well, after the interest rate, okay. So I have here from part 1 up until part 4. Okay, I can actually combine this as well, which is the string concatenations, the total repayment. Okay, I'm going to copy this and put it right at the end here. Okay, now we're going to run this. Okay, 2. Oh, there's an error somewhere. Let's look into it. So system.print line interest rate. Okay, so it's easier here to fix. Now let's run it again. 2. The first will be 10,000. Okay. Loan duration is 4. So you straight away get that loan 1, right? Well, here it says loan 2, so there's a bug there which we are going to fix. That's fine. Now for the second one is 15, if I can recall it correctly. And we have loan durations 8. Okay. So you get the loan informations here. So why my number of loans here will be 2, which is incorrect, because this shouldn't be number of loans. This should be I, right? Because as I loop through here, I have for integer equal to 1, I less the number of loans. The number of loans input by the user, of course, is 2 in this case. That's why I see 2. So if I run this again, 2 here, 10,000, 4, 15, and 8, right? So you can see loan 1 and loan 2. So we have it here, loan 1, principal 10,000, durations 4, interest rate is 5, total repayment 12,000. And you have loan 2, principals 15,000, durations 8 years, interest rate equal to 6, and total repayment 22,000. So we have all the information already. Now the final part is we need to find the maximum and also the average interest rate. So out of these two, we need to highlight in this case will be the total repayments. 22,200 will be the maximum total repayment. How I'm going to do that is, we have done that already previously. You just need to, in order for you to find a maximum value, you just need to first create a temporary variables, where here I'll say max temp, okay, equal to 0. Okay. Now I will add if else statement somewhere after I get my total repayment. So here I will say if my total repayment is greater than my max, what is my variables? Max temporary maximum. I will do here my max temp. Okay, my max temp will be equal to total repayment. Okay. Well, I think max temp will be kind of like misleading in this case. Let's do max total repayment, maximum total repayment. I think this will be better. Okay. So again, if my total repayment is greater than my maximum total repayment, so my maximum total repayment will become the total repayment. Okay. And I will only need to print around here after the loop what is my maximum, what it says here, maximum repayment amount. Okay, maximum repayment amount. So here I'm just do a string concatenations, maximum total repayment amount. Okay, and I'm going to do another print first. Well, even I haven't calculated the average yet, but I'm just going to do it straight away. So the average interest rate will be, well, I'm going to do definitely average AVG interest rate. Okay. So how am I going to calculate the average interest rate? I'm going to put something here. So I'll do a total here, total interest rate plus equal interest rate. Okay. I would need to initialize it, the total as 0 as well here, equal to 0. Okay. Then only I do a total. And finally, once I get the total, then I would just need to do something here. I can declare it here, double average interest rate is equal to the total interest rate divided by the number of loans. Okay. Let's run it again. Okay, so total loan will be 10,000, 4, okay, 15,000, 8, and you get your maximum repayment amount is 22,200, which is this one. That's correct. Average interest rate is 0.055. Of course, if you want to show it in, propose 5.5, then you can just multiply by 100. Okay, and you can show the percentage sign as well just by doing a concatenations here. Now let's run this again. Hopefully it works. Okay, so principal amount again 10,000. Loan durations with 4, 15, and 8. Okay. So again, here you can see interest rate 5.5, maximum repayment amount is 22,000. So you can see here again, we do a total interest rate divided by number of loans to get the average interest rate. As for the maximum, we just do a simple if statement here. So basically, this exercise tests your knowledge regarding how to use a scanner class, the if-else statements, and we also see looping implemented here. So I think that's it for this video. Thank you very much.